Keeping us company, this is NewsCheck. My name is Edward Kabasa. We do welcome you to this live broadcast. Of course, a lot is going to be taking place today, and one of those is the arraignment of Garissa Governor Ali Korani in court. The Director of Public Prosecution has directed that the governor plus some other players within the county be charged of alleged scandal involving 233 million shillings, 506,000. Yesterday, the governor did spend the better part of the day being interrogated by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. He did also appear in court, but he was placed under custody pending a bail hearing. More on that will be made available to you in due course. Plus, of course, the Senate this afternoon will be meeting. One of the agendas there is the debate on the shareable revenue. The formula has been very elusive. Despite the establishment of a 12-member committee, the senators are yet to reach a consensus. That particular debate will be taking place hopefully this afternoon, and it is a broadcast that you can catch on KBC Channel 1. And in studio this morning is Bishop David Munyiri, Tagana of the Glory Outreach Assembly. There is also a lot to talk about in terms of national cohesion. We have seen over the last couple of days so much happening, politicians being arraigned in court over alleged hate speech. So we are going to be discussing this, of course. We know that the law is the law. Chapter 4 provides for so many things. One of them is freedom of expression, and that particular freedom is supposed to be exercised in some kind of a way. But first things first, what do you make of what we have seen so far? Alleged hate speech from politicians being arrested and arraigned in court, and of course Kenyans in their usual fashion reacting to all that.
Well, thank you very much for having me here today. That's a very important discussion that we are having today, because honestly speaking, our nation is at a situation whereby we would want to see some change. We would want to see some change in the sense that there is too much talking, and the talking is not really bad. As you have said, we all have freedom to express ourselves, but the language is probably one of those things that we don't really like, particularly those of us who come from the church side and who represent the children and the common mwananchi who watches and listens to our readers. I think we are not very comfortable with the language, particularly when people speak so negative about each other. The politicking, it is their job, politicians to politic, just like it is my job to preach the gospel. However, I tend to think that it has come too early, particularly the campaign angle side of it. And worse still, the context, the timing just within the context of the COVID-19 and all the struggles that we have gone through and still going through. And I think something needs to be done about that.
And the church has always come out strongly against such remarks by politicians or any Kenyan who is deemed to have incited a particular group. Is the church or the religious groups coming strongly against what we have seen over the last couple of days? Because the reactions has mostly been from their fellow politicians.
Yes, we have come very strongly. We have come very strongly. I guess the reason why we probably may not have been heard is, number one is the churches were shut down because of the COVID, and we are going through the phases of reopening. So the phases of reopening have a lot of limitations in terms of the amount of time that we have, an hour and a half, and also the membership. So really, when it comes to speaking, we may not necessarily have enough time to express ourselves as we should within the limited time with these protocols of reopening the churches. However, whenever there is an opportunity, we have always done that, and that's why I appreciate the opportunity to be here today to speak. I happen to be the General Secretary of the Federation indigenous and evangelical Christian churches of Kenya. So when I speak, I don't just speak about on my behalf. I speak on behalf of all the indigenous churches that as the General Secretary, and also I am the founder of Glory Outreach Assembly in Kenya. So really, we speak, but there are opportunities to speak, or rather our voice may not be heard as much as it should. So this is a good opportunity for us to say that we really condemn with the strongest terms, particularly the language that is being used by the politicians against each other. And most of the children are at home because the schools have been shut down. Most of the people work from home. So we have a lot of time. Kenyans have a lot of time to watch the news. And even right now, many Kenyans are watching us because they have the time, they're at home, even as the situation reopens. So we get to hear almost every word that is said. And as a church, we feel that the politicians need to check their language and speak with a bit of decorum, particularly when it comes to speak about each other. Some decorum is needed because of the audience that is watching. And people take politicians seriously. Our country is so much influenced by politics. So when the children and the younger people and other people hear about the language that they use, they are bound to take it very, very serious and to influence them. So we are not for it. We condemn it strongly, and we advise politicians to check their words and be a bit of decorum. And
2022 is just 2 years away. Do you believe perhaps there is an attempt or a scheme of the political class to heighten the political temperatures like we have seen over the last couple of years when it is an electioneering period?
I would not even use the word just 2 years away. I would say it is 2022 is very far. Based on the challenges and the issues that are facing our country, the economy is not good. It's actually just not working. The COVID-19, the disease, the schools, the institutions being shut down. We have too much issues of national importance that we could prioritize and give focus rather than talk about 2022. Today, the common mwananchi is, number one, is struggling with what to eat. They're struggling with food to put on the table. The common mwananchi has come from a time when many lost their jobs because of the COVID-19. Others, even today, they still unable to pay their house rent. The common mwananchi is thinking about the child who is in the house, not knowing when the school is going to be opened, and also taking care of all the needs that comes with that. When the discussions have begun about the school reopening, but the common mwananchi is as much as he or she appreciates the schools are reopening, they are more concerned with the economic implications of reopening, coming from a context where they have not been working, they've been struggling with food, they have been taking care of themselves from disease. In view of all that, 2022 is just too far away to start looking at issues of 2022 because we have more pressing issues today which are of great national importance. So
then how best can our leaders, our politicians articulate issues without necessarily having to whip emotions?
I think that's where now we need, that's where I talked about the decorum, because as one of the things that hypes up the emotions is the language. When you speak in a language that is so negative or derogatory to another party, even if you subscribe to different political ideologies, you are bound to hype the tensions, particularly to all those people who follow them up and who subscribe to their ideologies. So one of the things that the politicians need to do is to tame their people, because everyone has an influence. And when they say something, the people who follow them, and that's what we have seen. When somebody says something, a huge group of people who either support them or subscribe to the ideology follows, and sometimes they make it even worse than what the person said. So, and of course, the picture is very clear in this country as to who has the influence and who does not, because it is clear the politicians who have the influence. It is very clear who they are. and the people following them, things have begun to shape up. So definitely, they have the ability to influence all those behind them so that they don't hype up or they don't cause tensions by what they speak.
And are they speaking for themselves, or they're speaking on behalf of the people that they represent?
In my view, not many politicians speak on behalf of the people they represent. Most of the politicians speak on their behalf. But this is where our role as a church has been not very effective, as I may say, because it's our role to do civic education to the common mwananchi, and we do our best given the opportunity, though we don't get as much opportunity as we should. But in our civic education, we help the common mwananchi, the Wanjiko, to know that not exactly everything that the politician is saying is for their best interest, because the politician is so much focused on today and what they will get out of it, and tomorrow, and their goal is to mobilize and influence everybody, rally everybody behind them, using whatever method. That is why the language sometimes is not very present, because they want to use the end justifies the means to a politician. It doesn't matter who is listening, it doesn't matter the damage, it doesn't matter the disunity that could be caused nationally by the words that they speak, because they care very much about themselves. But I think in this country, it's the high time that we need leaders, really, who will lead with the mwananchi in their mind and their heart. People who will be visionary leaders, not just political interest, self-interest, but visionary leaders. People who are looking at the future of this country, people who are looking at the person who actually voted for them to go out and represent them. We need that, and we lack that. We have too many politicians compared to visionary leaders who care about the future for this country, about the future of the other person. That's why we are having a problem. But again, as I said, we have to do a lot of civic education to the common mwananchi to realize that at the end of it all, it is that politician who is benefiting, it is the mwananchi who is suffering, and it is the common mwananchi who will be required to vote in that person and who really doesn't eventually help them.
And one of the things that have really been proved to be helping Kenyans or any other populace elsewhere is job opportunities, because when you are busy, you don't have time to listen to all these arguments which are being put forward by politicians and other leaders. In our situation, what do we need to do? I know that COVID-19 is supposed to unite us, but what are other things that we can do as a country to keep our minds off of what we are witnessing currently? This whole discussion, this whole dialogue that is being brought up by our leaders.
Yes, there is so much that we can do, because as we said earlier, these people are doing what they actually are voted to do as politicians. They talk and do the other things. But the common mwananchi need to be thinking more about what is it that I can do myself today that can help make my family and my life better. I should be thinking as a common mwananchi, as Bishop David Munyiri, what is it I can do today, other than sitting there listening to people and then taking up their message and beginning to hate a common Kenyan or just to argue over that. I should be thinking of what could I do within the difficult time that we are living in so that my life will even be better. For example, if I'm a businessman and I cannot do any business because of the way the situation is, I could be preparing myself and just renovating my premises or keeping my client through whichever way, so that when the economy begins to build up, at least I'll have the people. The children who are at home with their parents, they need to be engaging themselves with how they can learn and keep learning, so that when the schools reopen, they will again not be so illiterate and so much disconnected with the educational stuff. But if they are all the time going to spend the time talking about what this politician said and the other politician said, I think it doesn't make any the situation better. For us as a church, Of course, it's our huge responsibility to pray for the country. It's our huge responsibility to pray for the nation and all those leaders. And that's what we spend our time on. Even when we cannot congregate as much and have as much time as we could, we spend a lot of our time praying, and when we have the opportunity to just speak and sensitize the people that, oh, there is hope beyond the COVID, and we should not be distracted by all the political rhetoric. Neither should we agree to be divided along political lines and political ideologies, particularly for 2022. It is so ironic that we can start hating each other because of 2022 when we have pressing problems for today that we need to commonly come together and address and ask ourselves, what is the best environment for our children to be reopening the school at this point? Have we met those conditions? What could be my role as a common person in ensuring that there will be safety in the children reopening the schools? What is it that we can do today as common people to ensure that we are supporting each other through this struggle? Because together we can minimize the struggles and the challenges of living. I remember when COVID became a big problem, as a church reader, where I'm stationed at Kahawa Wendani, people started coming to ask me, what are we going to eat? I've lost my job. I used to clean people's clothes. They cannot allow me in. I have no food. I am kicked out of the house. My medical bills. Those things, I could not separate myself from them as a church reader. I cannot just separate and focus on the spiritual part of it, because this is the person. So what I did is that I created Hope for Nations, to just an initiative to ensure that I address the common prevailing problems, where I help the people to get food, to pay their rent, to get out of hospital. In other words, what I'm saying is that there are issues that are facing us today that cannot wait for tomorrow. They cannot wait for 2022. But when we come together and we support each other, the burden becomes lighter. We come together and share with each other. What are you doing? How are you dealing with it? How I'm dealing with it. It is going to be easier for us, and I think that is where the common Mwananchi should be spending much of their time, in engagement of, Edward, how are you dealing with this? How are you dealing with this challenge? This is the way I'm dealing with it. And that, helping each other, that is what we need to do. In terms of our perspectives and the way we look at things, the way we do things, we could build each other a lot as Kenyans and share whatever we have in form of ideas, in terms of material things.
Do you think that the president is getting the support that he needs when it comes to nation building and ensuring that we have a cohesive country?
I don't think he's getting the support that he needs. And sometimes I look at him and I pity him and I sympathize with him, because I look at him and see a person who really sometimes almost left alone, or sometimes I look at him and see a disconnect between the people who elected him and him, and probably in my view, when I look at this disconnect, sometimes I see like he might be getting different information from what it is on the ground. Because really, if he is getting the real information and the correct information, and if he truly understands the suffering of the common man, the food, the clothes, the medical, the challenges, the fears that the Kenyans have, I think probably things would have been different. So I really don't think he gets the support that he needs, because, and why I say this, he has come out clearly many times and said, these are my 4 agendas. And clearly spelled out, and they're great, they're excellent. And if we achieved all those 4 agendas, I'm telling you, everyone would want to come and live here. But then the guys who are around him, or the people surrounding him, even if either they don't understand those agendas, or they want to use them as paths to their selfish interests. And that's why, in my view, that's why there is all this political bickering. That's why there's all this conflict. Because if we want to support our boss, and we have you have your interest and I have my interest, I guess most likely what seems to happen is that the people have focused more onto their personal interests. So I really don't think he gets that.
And there is always that debate about campaigning for the next available seat. It looks as if the focus has shifted from the president's development agenda to his succession. Yesterday, Deputy President did ask politicians not to peddle lies and false information that the president is going to seek another term in office. What do we need to do as a country if we exclude our leaders? What do we need to do as Kenyans to ensure that whatever we do, however time we got, we ensure that it is in line with the Constitution and it is in line with the Vision 2030, which some may argue that perhaps the time frame is not going to be enough to achieve?
I think, again, it goes back to how much politics has influenced our nation. Because some people will sit there and just want to listen to what these leaders say. Mm-hmm. And we cannot fail to listen to them, because that's why we elected them to go represent us. But again, we should listen to them with an ear whereby we are able to distinguish between what is helpful to the Kenyan people and what is really not helpful. For example, right now at this moment, the focus on 2022 is, in my view, is completely irrelevant to the common Kenyan. It is irrelevant. Mm-hmm. It is not the right time to be talking about this. And when I listen to all this talk of 2022, it makes me feel very disappointed being a Kenyan and being a leader, because I will listen to that, and when I walk out of my house, right out there, I'm going to meet a hungry Kenyan. I'm going to meet a person who is saying, "Bishop, help me, I've been kicked out of the house." I'm going to meet the real, just walking out of the house after I have sat and watched and listened to the politician speaking about 22 and everything that they have to say, just out there, not very far. You don't need to drive to find a Kenyan who is struggling with today's issue. As basic as food, as basic as house rent, as basic as medical, and of course the fears that every Kenyan have with the COVID. Praise God, the story is changing, that the curve is flattening, but the fears in us still remains there, and the implications when it comes to issues of children opening school, when it comes to fully exercising our freedom of worship by freely being in the religious gatherings as much as you want, whichever time, whichever number, as much as you want, and to lead, which is fundamental to our very core, the freedom to worship and the much time that we want to use and the number of people. Those to us are key issues, and that's why I find it extremely ironic and very sad that the politicians would just want us to think about 2022 and forget everything else, the real issues that we are struggling with today. A human being has a vacuum in their heart, which is always filled by the religious being that they subscribe to, whatever it is. And when that freedom is infringed, either because of understandable prevention of COVID or whatever protocols that we have to observe, that person has a big problem, and that person has a gap in their life. There is something that they need. And so if you try to just push them to talk about your political ambitions and whatever will happen in the future, I think that is difficult.
What do you make of the media coverage of all this? How has the performance of the media been over the last couple of weeks?
Well, if I'm honest, I think I really don't understand it. I really don't understand it. If I'm honest, I really don't understand it. The whole thing the whole thing that the way the media has dealt with this issue, in my view, I guess it has left more questions than answers.
All right. We have the National Commission, the National Cohesion and Integration Commission. Do you think it has performed its mandate as far as taming hate speech is concerned?
No, it hasn't. A big no, it hasn't. And I have wondered why, because historically, we have watched it change from one leader, one team to the other, and but the result is the same. Regardless of who takes it, regardless of who is leading it, regardless of the team, of who champions the national cohesion, the result has been the same. What result? Just rhetoric, too much talk, threats, and promises that whoever does this is going to happen, whoever does, but very little action. And when that little action comes, it is marred by who said it, political inclination. So there will be people who will say something and get away with it easily. There will be people who will say something and tomorrow they have a whole contingent of security detail looking for them. I think that as a church leader, I see bias, and which I don't know whether it is intentional or it is as a result of fear or the systems and policies that they use are not clear to them. But I really wonder, a commission that is well protected by the proper policies and documentation and constitution, that is funded, that understands the history of the conflicts that we have in the country. I really wonder and ask myself all the time, why is it they are unable to deliver? What is it that they lack? They are protected. They have constitutional position mandates. They have the money. They have the teams. They are intelligent. But the same story all the time. They will stand up, threaten somebody who says something, say if this happens, this will happen. But very little action. Very little action. And the moment that they will take up their position and do what we expect as Kenyans, whereby we expect them to prevent and to tame all those people who cause those conflicts. The moment they'll do that, we'll have a more peaceful Kenya. The moment they'll take that responsibility seriously and do it, we will have a more peaceful Kenya. And I would be very interested, honestly, to know why they don't deliver. Because in my view, I expect them to be able to deliver. And if I was going to rate them on a scale of 0 to 10 historically, I would probably give them 3 out of 10.
What we're going through right now as a country, someone would perhaps argue that it's what we inherited from our fathers and even our forefathers. So how does the future generation disentangle itself from what we are witnessing right now?
That is the tragedy of this country. It is the tragedy. Edward, that's the tragedy of this country. Because for whatever reasons, there seems to be a very programmed and crafted way of to change people's thinking, which seems to move from one generation to the other, because the same historical challenges that we had are the same ones that you'll find today. At a certain point, you're going to find the young people as if they're going to be the solution, and as if they're the people who are going to have a different future for this country. But with the unemployment, with the poverty, with the issues that where they have to be so much depend on others, it is so difficult for them to propagate their ideologies. I used to be a teacher many years back, 32 years ago. I used to be a teacher at Karima Girls High School in Nyandarua. And when I listened to the students speak, and I watched them, and then I listened to them during the competitions, those poems that they make and speak about the Kenya they want, All
right, we'll get to that. But right now, I want to cross over to the Milimani Law Court, where Garissa Governor Ali Kurani is appearing. He has applied for bail, and that particular ruling is currently being handed out. Let us listen in.
On with their normal lives and ensure they attend court. On the peculiar circumstances of this case, senior counsel argued that the charge sheet only demonstrated the transfer of funds, and that no criminal offense is disclosed, that no money was demonstrated to have been lost, stolen, or misused, as was in the cases cited, that there was no allegation that the governor participated in such laws, and there is no criminal provision that criminalizes leadership. He further argued that it's not the mandate of this court to give effect to Chapter 6 of the Constitution, nor that of the DPP, and that the DPP's mandate was only to charge, that offenses against accused one have no basis in law. Mr. Nyamudi associated himself with the senior counsel's submissions and added that the court should consider seriousness of the offenses and find that there was no benefit bestowed either on accused themselves or other accused beneficiaries. The above are the arguments concerning the various positions taken by the parties. Article 3 of the Constitution on the defense of the Constitution bestows upon every person an obligation to respect, uphold, and defend the Constitution. This court is hence clothed with the necessary powers, just like any other person, to uphold and defend the Constitution. Hence, among the duties of this court is to put into effect the Constitution. The only duty this court does not have is to interpret the Constitution. Parliament was to enact legislation to give subordinate courts the powers to interpret the Constitution. It has not done so. In order to arrive at the various decisions on the issue of bail, I have considered the facts in the charges. Mainly, they deal with transfer of monies within Garissa County government, and mismanagement of the same. Whether this happened is a matter of evidence that can only wait for the trial. I also considered that there was no loss of money, personal gain or benefit, either to accused or to their beneficiaries. I've also considered the roles played by each accused in the alleged mismanagement of funds and the positions held by the accused in the Garissa County. I've also considered the authorities placed before me, and in particular paragraph 8 of the case of FNW Babayao, that is Ferdinand Ndungu Waititu Babayao, vs. Republic 2019 EKLR, where the judge held, and I quote, "It was not far-fetched for the prosecution to contend that the appellant would most likely interfere with their witnesses or conduct himself in a manner likely to compromise their case if he was not barred from accessing his office during the pendency of the case. There are documented incidents of loss and or disappearance of vital documents from certain offices where public or state officers charged with corruption or economic crimes related to their work have been allowed unrestricted access to the offices during the pendency of their cases. Having said as above, it's apparent that I will admit all accused persons to reasonable bail terms in the spirit of the Constitution, and also on the presumption of innocence, also in the spirit of the Constitution, in order to allow the accused to continue with their normal lives, but ensure that they attend trial. I found that accused 1 faces only 2 counts, accused 2, 6 counts, accused 3, 2 counts, accused 4, 6 counts, accused 5, 6 counts. I also considered the nature of the offenses and the sentences to be meted out in any case there is a conviction, and I have decided as follows. Accused 1 to a cash bail of Kenya shillings 3,250,000 or a bond of Kenya shillings 5 million with one surety of similar amount. Accused 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 to a cash bail of 1,200,000 or a bond of Kenya shillings 3 million with one surety of similar amount. All accused are hereby barred from their offices, only allowed to visit while accompanied by an officer from the EACC. They should not make any attempt to approach or interfere with any witness in whatever form. This will lead to automatic cancellation of bond terms. All are accused to deposit their passports in court and only to leave the jurisdiction of the court with the court's permission. The parties are to open a common email and the DPP to disclose within 14 days. Counsels are given another 14 days to take instructions. There will be a virtual mention for further directions on 23rd October 2020 at 10 a.m. Those are the orders. Yes? Yes. So what do you want me to do? Mr. Onge, yes? Accused 5 and accused do not hold passports. Yeah? Okay. Any other issue? Okay.
And what you are watching there is live proceedings of the court session there, Douglas Ogoti, issuing some ruling there for the bail application of Garissa Governor Ali Korani, who has been accused of a number of offences, among them embezzlement of funds. Of course, the magistrate there has barred the governor from office pending the hearing of this, the hearing and conclusion of this particular matter, and he has released the governor on bail, 3 million shillings or 5 million shillings bond. That basically means that the governor will not be allowed to step into office until this matter is heard and determined. Of course, we have seen this has been the trend, and really, Bishop, some have argued that it is a very good direction. It sends the message out there that the judiciary is committed in the war against corruption. But what do you make of it so far? Are we really headed towards the right direction? Are these steps really strong enough?
It is a very delicate balance between their human rights to be heard and to be released, and then the balance. The other side of it is, if you have 233 million or whatever, what you leave out there for bail or those terms is actually nothing. And I think that is where we really have a big problem with. I may not understand the law. I'm not a lawyer. I'm a clergy. But when if I have been accused or I am in court because of millions and millions of shillings or billions, and I am released with a bail of just a drop in the ocean, and then I go out there, that sometimes we haven't seen that work very well. Because that sometimes becomes the end of that story. All things just change dramatically. At the bottom of the matter and the cause of our problems in this country is corruption. That is That is the biggest problem that we have. It is, recently we have seen a very good indication when big people are aligned in court. That's a good indication, because we never used to have that before. It is in the last, particularly in the last 1 year or so, we have seen that happening. But then, what happens after that? After one is aligned, bail is given, that story becomes almost the end, and then we go to another one, and the same script plays. These millions, this bail, board, then that becomes hopeless.
So the law is there.
The law is there.
Systems are also there. What is missing?
Good question. The law is there, the systems are there. I think before we talk of what is missing, I guess what is there is corruption. What is missing is there is a lot of integrity that misses in many of these things. Integrity, so much spelled out in Chapter 6 of our Constitution, so clear, so much spoken about, but the integrity of processes and the systems does not seem to be overcoming or rising above these challenges.
You've talked about the script being the same, the cast being different, the outcome being the same. And the systems being there, the law being there, integrity not being there. Then what do we need to do? Is it time that probably we considered bringing the church and the religious groupings more into this particular discourse? We have seen it with the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, Wabukala. Some would argue that he is doing a very good job.
Yes, and we have said this before as a church, that the church needs to become part and parcel of these systems and these processes. Hopefully, we can be able to inject some ethics, some integrity into it, and I think that earlier on we said that this country is so much influenced by politics. And even the young people, the children, you'll always hear them talk about what is trending in politics. They will be talking about that. We are so much influenced by that, which means that the church and other institutions, religious institutions, are left out in the decision-making processes. You look at the positions that are normally that normally makes this major decision, like the parastatals, for example. You don't see religious people. They don't see the church. You don't see the board, the top organs involvement of the church, and so the decisions that are made and the processes. That is why we would have. There's no voice of reason. The ethical component of it is a different perspective of looking at an issue. It's not there from a religious and moral aspect. That is, I think the church needs to be involved more and more. And as I said earlier, the church has limited opportunity to speak. And when the church speaks, because the force of evil is very strong against the force of good, sometimes the voice of the church is not really heard. And once again, that's why we appreciate having a discussion like this, where religious leaders can speak and such forums, because these are the opportunities that we lack. But other than speaking, the church also needs to be represented in the decision-making organs, in the senior positions, whereby they can also influence from inside.
So we know that the Bible speaks about repentance.
Yes.
And God forgiving us for our sins. The law will always remain the same. When you commit a crime, you have to pay for it. So how do we merge it in such a way that a Kenyan knows that if I break the law, if I'm convicted of corruption, I must serve time or pay the fine that probably has been stipulated in the law. And on this other side, I also have to appreciate that there is a higher being that I need to ask for forgiveness. How do we merge it in a way that we are going to move towards a direction that we not only see ourselves as people who are supposed to be responsible to our God, but also people who are supposed to be responsible to the laws that govern this country.
The two are not in conflict in any way.
Mm-hmm.
The law is meant for the harmony of the operations of the human relationships, and it should be clear that if I do something that breaks the law, I should be prepared to meet the consequences, because that is the law, and that is its part, and the law plays a very important role in harmonizing the relationships and safeguarding those human relationships. The only problem is when that law is kind of influenced by other factors, and that's why we are talking about corruption. That's why we are talking about the integrity. So the law in itself has no problem. It is the systems and the processes that would undermine it. So forgiveness, on the other hand, is a concept where your wrongs are written off, but that does not take away. That does not take away the consequences. It doesn't take away the consequences. For example, when in the Bible, when Adam and Eve sinned, they got the consequences, and there was still, and God still forgave them and they continued living. So those are different. They actually work together. You get your forgiveness. It lights off your wrong. It gives you a very internal feeling that your guilt has been taken away. That's forgiveness. But the law still deals with its consequences.
All right. Let us now cross over to an event organized by the Kenya Editors Guild. Of course, the matters being discussed there is how the media is supposed to be reporting court proceedings. We have seen just a couple of minutes ago the magistrate handing down his ruling to the governor for Garissa County, Ali Korani. The Kenya Editors Guild have its set of guidelines, and speaking right now is Munyiri, the chairperson of the Media Council. Let us listen in.
Sometimes readers read a story and they do not know what the reporter is saying. Until we got people like Dr. Nyakundi, who brought into courts equal serious analysis like happens in politics. So that when you read it at the weekend, you can know, oh, this is exactly what the judgment meant. Apart from just being brought to court and being accused, it has increasingly now become a respected field. And we can attest to that today with the launch of these guidelines. We must always act responsibly as editors and reporters in respecting court reporting. I will just like to say that this launch of these guidelines is coming at a critical, crucial time when Kenya has become freed, Kenyan media has become freed to completely and freely cover courts, and especially now corruption cases. In our time, you did not just cover what came to court. There are stories we brought to the newsroom and the editor pushed it slowly away. Not that it's not factual, but the times have changed. Media is now free. Media has become very independent. Media now can cover, I do not know anything Kenyan media cannot cover. Indeed, now all we need is the guidelines. Even as we are so free to cover courts, this is the way it should be done. I'm glad to hear that Dr. Nyakundi has generously borrowed from a code of conduct for the practice of journalism in Kenya. It is entrenched in the act. Part of it, like 10 bullet points, just dwell on coverage of courts. You'll be surprised that however elite some journalists may look, they do not know that you are not supposed to interpret evidence before it's tabled by a witness. It happened last week in a very dangerous way. But Justice Oko, these days courts do not summon editors and journalists. Times were when we used to be summoned. At one time in the newsroom, I want to cut this short, just acknowledging why these book guidelines are so important. At one time in the newsroom, an editor dissected the judiciary with a headline, "Judicial Tyranny." Someone was nearly jailed. Maybe only Kwamchetsi could remember that. Another time, during the Ouko Commission of Inquiry, a commission is just like a court. Ouko was reported to have been summoned to State House. The editor decided to interpret it like Moi summoned Ouko. Later, we learned that State House is not Moi. The editor was summoned. Summoning Ouko to State House does not mean Moi summoned him. A sub-editor lost his job. Maybe these guidelines by Dr. Nyakundi now, editors will know how to cover courts, how to dissect court material, what to go into, what to avoid, and what to do with all the freedom we've got. And finally, we are working with the judiciary to try to tame a problem that we cannot cover up. Quack journalists covering courts, and not just courts, everywhere. What we are telling all departments of government is the Media Council of Kenya accreditation card is now foolproof. Do not allow journalists to cover such important functions without you asking them identify. So simple. And that card bears an identification. It's digital now. You can check and actually see, yes, these are journalists. We are having lawyers complaining. Parliament has now perfected it. No journalist without Media Council accreditation can enter Parliament. It should also be the same with the courts so that the complaints calm down. Thank you very much, Kwamchetsi. And these guidelines, Dr. Nyakundi, we are very grateful. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Maina. I would like to thank all of you who are with us virtually, and to just encourage you now, just to enable us to manage the time better, I would like to encourage you to use the chat button on the side.
All right. That is a function organized by the Kenya Editors Guild in conjunction with the Media Council of Kenya. Guidance on court reporting will be unveiled in a couple of moments, but just a quick reminder, Garissa Governor Ali Korane has been barred from office. He has been granted bail, however, of 3.25 million shillings or a bond of 5 million shillings. That particular decision was handed down a couple of minutes ago by Justice or Chief Magistrate Douglas Ogoti at the Milimani Law Courts. Korane barred from office, and his visit to that office must be supervised. He has been granted bail of 3.25 million shillings or a bond of 5 million shillings. The court is trying to speak to Kenyans, perhaps, that it is committed to the war against corruption. We have discussed that, but of course there is the talk about the willingness of Kenyans to support this particular process. That I, as Edward, or you as Bishop, you have a responsibility to perform your mandate as a Kenyan, a law-abiding citizen. When you see an act of crime in place, you report it or you stop it. You don't engage in corruption. It is baby steps, but since independence, perhaps there ought to have been put in place things or systems to ensure that we adequately deal with these matters, that no one is able to even think of engaging in corruption. The media right now is at crossroads. How do we independently report? Just like you have heard in the discussions that have been taking place there. How do we report such matters? Earlier, I asked you about how you gauge the performance of the media in all this. I will pose that question again, this time not about cohesion, but how we report matters of graft. How would you rate us as the media?
Well, I like the word there. That two things that I like from there is one is is the fact that the media is free now, and that comparison between how it used to be, I think I like that, because at my age I have also watched the progress and the independence of the media and the freedom. That is something commendable, and we really appreciate that. Probably there's still some way to go, but I like it when I hear from that meeting that you can report everything. You are free to report everything. The second thing I like from that meeting is that there is effort to discuss how to report responsibly, and I think that is where the issue is, because sometimes, based on what is reported, the way the person leads it, it really causes more problems than solutions. It makes people, even the flaring up that we were talking about for the cohesion and other issues, sometimes it is based on you have not really got the full picture, the context. In my younger days, I used to hear people saying I got misquoted, I was misquoted. I don't hear it anymore, but it means that if people can easily get something out of context in what has been reported and take it to be very offensive to them. That is why I appreciate the fact that there is a forum where people are discussing, reporting responsibly, and based on what they have said, that they want to go further and have the guidelines on what does that reporting responsibly mean, what are the guidelines. So I think that is progress.
And the church and religious groupings are today investing in the media business. Are we going to see the same guidelines that is being given to the mainstream media also being adopted by the media organizations which are owned by these religious organizations?
That's a great question, and probably I don't know who have thought about that before or any forum to discuss that, but I think that's a discussion, that's a conversation that needs to be there, because it is important to do that. But how would we do that without infringing on the religious freedoms of the church and the people? How do we do that? In the same manner that how do we report and still be fair to all the parties? I would want to see the media from the church fraternity, the streaming and everything that the church is doing since COVID. I would like to see some decorum in everything, and but of course I wouldn't want us to go into the direction of kind of scattering the freedom or infringing the freedom of the church in what they say. We have in the last few years been struggling with the freedom of having a church registered in the country, which actually touches on the very core of fundamental right of religious rights of a person. But the argument from the other side has always been that as you exercise that freedom, it is not in a vacuum. It is in the context of other people's rights also. So if we are going to go to the direction of having the guidelines in the church streaming and media and programs that they have, I would wish to ask the question of who is going to regulate, who is going to provide those guidelines. Is it people who subscribe to that religious faith? Because really, I cannot go and sit in that court and be a judge when I've not been to law school. I'm not a lawyer. I may do more disservice, more harm than good. In the same way, when it comes to regulating the freedom of worship of the religious people and what goes out, what somebody consumes, I think we would really have to look into the integrity of the system and the people who are charged with that responsibility. And that's why we have always complained as church leaders with the issues of registration, because the registration of a church should be as simple as it is today to register a company, where I just log into the system and get my company. It should be as simple as that when it comes to religious matters. But again, makes perfect sense. When somebody says, how does that church, when it is registered, exercise its religious freedom in the context of other people's rights? that brings the question of the regulation and the guidelines.
So, in other words, you're saying that the church should perhaps regulate itself?
Exactly. Perfect. That's what that has been the position. I told you earlier that I am the General Secretary of the Federation of all the indigenous evangelical Christian churches in Kenya. Our position is the church should regulate itself through umbrellas like the Federation of Indigenous Christian Churches. My church is Glory Outreach Assembly, but I have subscribed to an umbrella called the Federation of Evangelical Indigenous Christian Churches of Kenya, which has code of ethics as to how the people who subscribe to that should relate. And those are the people who should be given the mandate to really regulate the churches. But we cannot have someone who has never been to the church, who is not part of the church leadership, sitting somewhere and wanting to regulate. That cannot work. The church should regulate itself through the umbrellas. And the churches should be allowed to really register and be registered and be regulated under their own umbrellas.
All right. We'll continue with that particular discussion, but right now we cross over to Mombasa County, where Changamwe Member of Parliament Omar Munyiri is leading a donation drive in that particular constituency, and our reporter Michael Mwandiga is following those matters for us. Michael, do update us.
Good morning to you, Kabasa. We are coming to you live from Changamwe at Midani Technical Institution here in Changamwe constituency. And as it is now, the COVID-19 pandemic has dealt a major blow to learning sector in this country. And so far, learning institutions have been closed down due to stop the fast spreading of the virus. And this has dealt a major blow to private school teachers, with most of them being forced to do manual jobs in order to earn a living and fend for their families. And I'm joined by one of the private school teachers who will tell us her name and what the situation is at the moment. Welcome, madam. What is your name? And kindly tell us what is the situation at the moment which the private school teachers are going through. Kindly face the camera.
Okay, my name is Faith Mwangi. I'm a teacher at Bishop Mukala Academy. Okay, as teachers, we have been affected so much with this COVID-19 because we have been forced to do a lot of work that we were not supposed to be doing. Like, for example, some of us, we are taking mutuba from Kogoea and then we are selling. Others are cooking the things we call viazi karai here in Mombasa. And others, they are just doing the manual work like kazi kwa vijana. So it has been a hell of time to us as teachers. But I thank God that I can look at it at the positive way, that at least others, they have now open mind that they are not supposed to be depending so much with their teaching. They have realized that they can do much better than what they have been doing the other years. Yeah.
So far, it is 6 months down the line since this pandemic started. So far, maybe what are you telling others who maybe are languishing now due to this pandemic?
Okay, I can say that they are not supposed to be affected as much because God have given us the mind to think beyond the box. So even if this thing has come, we are supposed to embrace it because it is here, but we are supposed to look for other channels to get money. As I have said, you are supposed to have an open mind. You are supposed to embrace in other avenues that are going to bring money into our life. So we are not supposed to rely that I'm a teacher, so I have to do the teaching. Okay, there are tuitions that in the society, but for sure you are supposed to do much better than that. Yeah. So I can tell teachers not to rely so much in teaching. Just go out there and look for other avenues to get the money. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
And with the caseload now standing at 498,733 cases confirmed at the moment. Here I'm joined by the Changamwe MP, Mr. Omar Munyiri, who will tell us how he has intervened in their plight in order to make something for their families. Welcome, Mheshimiwa. Tell us what prompted you to organize this event so that to caution them with in this pandemic?
First of all, when this pandemic started, we looked at it and decided that this was going to be a long-term challenge. It was just not a short-term challenge. So we planned in such a way that we spread out our assistance a bit wider, not just as if we were doing 100 meters race. We were doing 10,000 meters race. So what we did, first of all, we distributed masks. We distributed sanitizers to saloons and barbers, together, of course, with the small business community. Then we also distributed soap. Furthermore, we were giving out what we call hygiene talks to make sure at least the public is aware of how to take care of themselves. And whenever we were going to meet the public, we were insisting on people to take care of themselves so that they can also take care of others. And thanks God, we've been responding well. We also had an opportunity to partner with one of the banks, which also donated some sanitizers and containers for washing hands to various parts in Changamwe, including religious institutions and marketplaces. So we actually lauded the initiative, and we are still encouraging others to follow suit, because hygiene should actually be maintained throughout. And perhaps this was a blessing in disguise to help us at least to realize that hygiene should be paramount and should be given attention at all times. Further than that, we've been assisting the different cadres in the community in giving them some foodstuff, as well as helping the small business community or business members to initiate businesses that, of course, that can sustain their lives now that their husbands, most of them, are out of job. And we are doing well, I would say. We are doing well, and we are still looking for more funds to support these ladies and youth to carry out small businesses so that they can sustain life during these hard times of COVID-19.
Now, and if I may ask, currently, how many teachers are you cautioning them today?
Today we are cautioning 300 teachers together with 50 bouncers who are out of business because of the pandemic. You know, they normally work in entertainment joints, and since the entertainment joints were closed, they had no business. So we have also included them. So we are doing 350 at a budget of around $500,000 to make sure that we assist them, however small, but of course just to show them that we appreciate that they are in difficult conditions, and the little that we can do is to appreciate them and also to encourage them to open up their mind, because every challenge normally has a blessing. So the blessing here is they have now opened up their minds to doing something extra to earn a living. So I think life might be even better after COVID-19 than it used to be before.
Okay, thank you so much, Mheshimiwa.
Thank you.
And that is Omar Munyiri, the MP of Changamwe, who has put as it is on how the situation is here with private teachers who are now facing the harsh economic times during this pandemic. That's what we have for you from Changamwe at Munyiri Technical School, which of course is in Changamwe constituency. Back to you, Edward Kabasa.
Thank you very much, Michael Mondiga, reporting live from Changamwe constituency, where the Member of Parliament, Omar Munyiri, is leading efforts to ensure that unemployed teachers or jobless teachers receive some much-needed donations. Of course, the COVID-19 pandemic has really hit the country hard. Every sector has been affected, Bishop. The church has also been affected. Some teachers employed by the Board of Management of various schools in the country have also been affected. Private schools have also received a beating. We have seen such donations. Despite the church being affected, are you leading donation efforts in your church?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, when the COVID pandemic broke, as a church we asked ourselves, how can we remain relevant to the people that we serve? Considering that the churches were shut down, so we were really not able to minister to them through the spiritual way, we asked, what can we do? So on 1st of April, we created an initiative that is called Hope for Nations. Nations because our vision as an organization for Glory Outreach Assembly is for nations. Matthew 28, 19, and 20, to go to the nations. So, and here nations really speak about people groups. So we created that initiative where our vision was to keep hope alive, to inspire hope during this difficult period. And from that 1st of April to today, we have fed over 3,000 people, paid house rents, hospital bills, got people into very difficult situations because that is what the church is about. But then the most frustrating part of it is that the demand is always higher than the supply. That you look at people coming to you, what they need is more than you could offer. And then as a church that relies also on the financial support from the same people who are affected and who are not even gathering anymore, so that makes it very difficult to sustain it. But even today, that's what we are doing. We respond to those needs of the people. And I was very impressed to watch that because it looks like in Changamwe, the member of parliament there has identified a very important group of people, the jobless teachers. And that's very strategic, and I really appreciate that. I don't know whether I'm more inclined to that because I used to be a teacher, and therefore I relate to that. But I think that is very important because the teachers play a critical role. You and I have seen what has happened within the few months that children have been at home. That tells you how important teachers are. That teenage pregnancies have increased, suicides, and a lot of challenges, simply because the teachers are not there to do their part. So I really appreciate that. And I would want to see someone else rise up like that MP to focus on the pastors themselves.
All right.
And take care of the pastors, because the pastors, they rely on the tithes and offerings from members who are also affected. Can we have somebody also rise up and come to umbrellas like the Federation of Churches of Kenya and say, how can we support the pastors who are hungry, their houses are closed?
All right.
And they come alongside us. And I would also want to see the government come alongside what we do.
You're raising a very good point. But hold that thought. We'll talk about helping the pastors deal with the effects of the coronavirus pandemic. We're taking a very short break. NewsCheck continues shortly. Just a quick reminder, the Garissa County Governor Ali Korane has been barred from office. He has been granted bail by the courts, 3.25 million shillings, or a bond of 5 million shillings. And also, the Kenya Editors Guild, in conjunction with the judiciary as well as the Media Council, are supposed to release court reporting guidelines. We do expect a speech from the President of the Court of Appeal, Justice William Ouko. Any moment now, he'll be addressing that particular event which is currently taking place in Nairobi. Don't go anywhere. NewsCheck continues shortly.
When the world changed, it made us go back to the simple joys and love the little things even more, like serving up your best, eating together, and sharing more. Now, we'll take nothing for granted and always remember to taste the simple joys. Coca-Cola. Taste the simple joys.
Tonight on KBC Channel 1.
Why have you become so insolent, Andrea?
I have my reasons, don't you agree?
What's wrong? Why would you say that?
You haven't told him anything, have you?
Please, Andrea.
What was he supposed to tell me?
Wait.
Listen, I really don't want to become more paranoid, but we really have to be very careful. It would be absolutely awful if Susanna found out about us.
What do you want, huh? Why are you doing this?
I'm the one that asks questions. If you behave, nothing will happen to you.
And Sophia? What have you done with her?
She's doing well.
In Love with Ramon.
People gonna
future. With them on, just shake up your man. Tumushia one done, tumushia. When your booty got show me now.
Baby, one time. Bossy baby, give me 2 times.
Full 180. Crazy. Trago ya la botella. Let's go.
Ha. I needed some with some bop in it.
Mamacita, where you at? I've been trying to reach you.
Choro, 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 choro. Get the pago, get the pago, get the pago. Katoto shepu awe, ayawe, ayawe. Tekenya katoto, kamini tekenya, tekenya katoto.
Tonight on KBC Channel 1.
I really can't be bothered anymore. I hate boxing. It's so violent and barbaric. No offense.
Boy, please.
One day, uta need Lucky tena. And a lot of other people in the future.
I'd like to go home.
Did you remember something?
If that's why you brought me here, it's not helping. Take me home.
Jules, I'm sorry.
Let's go.
I just thought that
That's your problem. You don't think. You never think.
Good morning. Thank you very much for keeping us company. This is NewsCheck. My name is Edward Kabasa. Quick reminder, the court has barred Garissa Governor Ali Kurani from office. He has, however, been granted bail of 3.25 million or 5 million shillings bond. And in studio is Bishop David Munyiri Tagana of the Glory Outreach Assembly. We were talking about the need for bishops and pastors to be assisted, the same way teachers are also being assisted, and the less fortunate Kenyans are also being assisted by the government to make ends meet during this COVID-19. How exactly do you want bishops and pastors to be assisted?
Oh, yeah, Edward, that's a great question. And I think the pastors and bishops are a very strategic group of people. Mm-hmm. As much as I have really liked what has happened to the teachers in Changamwe, and if the same was to happen around the country to the pastors and bishops, that would be great. Why do I think that way? One, these are the people who supports the country more than anybody else. The pastors and bishops, they pray for the country. They are the ones who have all the people with all the needs. Like during this pandemic, even if the people are not gathering, the pastors and bishops calls them, wants to hear, encourages them, inspires hope in them, and then they use the literal resources they have to support them. The church, the pastors and bishops have suffered a lot. Some of them relied on the tithes and offerings. When the churches were shut down, they could no longer do that. Some paid the rent, even for their own churches, the buildings. They pay the rent, they pay their house, they feed their families. And without the support from the church, most of them have suffered. Actually, some of them today have gone back to rural areas and live there. They need to be supported. And how should they be supported? We already have the structures through the umbrellas that exist in this country. Every church is meant to belong to an umbrella. My church is Glory Outreach Assembly, GOA, and I am under the umbrella of the Federation of Evangelical and Indigenous Christian Churches of Kenya, so with many other churches. So an umbrella like that, the Federation has networks. We know which pastor is hungry. We know which pastor is struggling to feed their family. And we, through the umbrellas, we'll be able to take care of that. Other umbrellas exist. There are about 20 umbrellas in this country with the structures and systems on how they can help the pastors. And you know, why I call it strategic is because once you help the pastor and the bishops during this difficult time, that help is replicated. It trickles down to all the people that they support. I've just told you from 1st of April, when we created Hope for Nations for Glory Outreach Assembly to support people there in Kahao and Dani, we have supported people so sacrificially. But if we had support from anywhere else, I was wishing my church was in Changamwe, where the Member of Parliament would also identify us as church and come on board. But I know that we have people who value church. They value the responsibility that the pastors and leaders have, especially the moral consciousness. That, can you imagine why we have so many problems during this COVID? One is that the people were not going to the church. So there is no place for them to be cautioned about, and their moral conscience being plagued because they are not going. So if somebody wants to kill, they kill. If somebody wants to have sexual relations with a teenage, they have it and get them pregnant because they are not being cautioned. Can you imagine being hungry spiritually and physically? No food, you are sick physically and you are sick spiritually. That is why I strongly believe that the initiative we have watched there for teachers is a great one, but the same needs to be replicated. Probably in all counties where we have systems through the counties where churches are recognized and through the umbrellas that exist, they are given support for what they are doing.
All right. We'll continue with that, but let us now cross over to the Kenya Editors Guild, where the launch of court reporting guidelines is currently underway. Chief guest there is Justice William Uko, the President of the Court of Appeal. Let us listen in.
Rosalia Omungo, who received me when I got here, the Chief Executive Officer of the Guild, Phyllis Ombonyo, the Chief of Party Family Health International. I found the title, or the organization, the title rather interesting. Faye Heselkon, the Acting Chief Democracy, Governance and Conflict of USID, members of the Fourth Estate, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I didn't walk alone. I came with an officer from my office, Mr. Benjamin Kinuthia, is at the back, just to give me support, moral support. So I bring warm greetings from the Honorable, the Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya, who is also the President of the Supreme Court, the Honorable Mr. Justice David Maraga, on whose behalf I am here. For me, it's an honor to have been invited by you to make a few remarks as you launch the court reporting guidelines, which will no doubt go a long way in enhancing the quality and accuracy of reporting from the courts. This will in turn ensure that the media, as the fourth pillar of democracy, effectively plays its cardinal role of communication and education by providing the facts and opinions that shape perspectives on many topics of the day and also influence government action and public policy on critical issues of our society. Covering courts is an important task for the news media for several reasons. First, reporting court cases fulfills the part of the watchdog function of the media. Secondly, there is a great deal of public interest in what the courts do, both in criminal and civil cases. Coverage of the courts can also expose unfairness in the system, either for accused persons, victims, or parties generally in a dispute. The reports may also help prevent injustices by shining a spotlight on the actions of judges, lawyers, prosecutors, parties, and other participants in the justice system. Despite the importance of courthouse reporting, judges, lawyers, and members of the public often complain about reporting that is inaccurate, biased, or short on content. To some, this is because those sent by media houses to do stories about cases in court have no or little training about the complexities of the justice system, the processes of the court, and its terminology. Some do not take time to understand the facts and how the law has been applied to those facts. There is also lack of appreciation of basic things like the structure of the judicial system and the traditions of the court. And I'm glad, looking at the guidebook, that the structure has now been spelled out for the reporters. There are, in addition, isolated instances of laziness and shortcuts, where reporters merely rely on third parties for their stories without verification with the source, or by drawing conclusions in matters that have not been tried and determined on merit. And I want to draw two instances that comes to mind, most of them quite recent. The first one is where there was a report in the newspaper of an outcome of an appeal whose judgment was yet to be delivered. And the question we asked, where did you get the judgment? Of course, I think it is Dr. Nyamboga who said that these days things have changed. In the past, the author of that story would have been someone to come to court to explain the source of that story. Quite embarrassing for the judges who are involved. They were still in the process of drafting the judgment, but here it was in the newspaper with the details of the parties and what the court said and how one party lost. That was not a very good thing. So what happened? The three judges recused themselves, and the matter had to start afresh. Again, delaying the matter further through careless reporting. The second one is where there were many parties involved. Several in hundreds had sued an institution of government, making some claims, and they won the case, but the newspaper reported that they had lost. So you can imagine what happened to those thousands of people who had sued, reading in the papers that they had lost, yet they had won the case. Stories obtained and disseminated recklessly without ascertaining their correctness have attracted civil litigation, as has been said here by those who spoke ahead of me. This has led to media houses paying colossal sums of money in damages for misreporting, which were seen as defamatory. A small story occupying less than quarter page, attracting an award in damages of 6 million is not a joke. If you are a reporter and you are making the media house for which you work pay 6 million for your reckless reporting, I think if you are to be dismissed by the media house and you came to court to ask for, this is a joke, to ask to be reinstated or to ask for damages, the court might not sympathize, because courts also are victims of misreporting, and courts are presided by human beings who will, in the instance in question, may feel biased against you. So we must always remember that whatever we report must be accurate. You must be in a position to defend it with facts, and so we have to be very, very careful. Issues of contempt also come to mind, that if you report something that is not true, or if you scandalize the court in the manner in which you report, that you can actually be cited and be committed for contempt. That will be you as the reporter. This again, as Dr. Nyamboga talked about it, has gone down. We do not have many journalists being committed for contempt of court. The last major one was in 1994, if you can all recall, Dedan Mbugua and David Makali, contempt that was tried in the Court of Appeal. I say it's an unfortunate blot in our jurisprudence because it was a matter, if tried today, perhaps they would have been just warned if they were found to have made a wrong report. Article 50 of the Constitution of Kenya grants every person the right to a fair trial. It is therefore important that reporters covering court sessions adhere to professional excellence by observing the basic tenets of journalism, which include accuracy and checking for facts to avoid a possible conflict between freedom of the media and the rights of a fair trial by litigating parties. In addition to this, and I believe the guidelines have adequately addressed it, and I've also had a speaker talk on the question of sub judice, a rule which regulates the publication of matters which are under consideration by a court, and more so if the publication creates a substantial risk that the course of justice in the pending proceedings would be impeded or prejudiced. We in the courts have our own share of blame. We make comments that are unnecessary but which convey an unintended message and which may be taken to point to the direction of the ultimate outcome. At the point of ruling on bond, for example, the court cannot be heard to hypothesize on how there is a certain trend of committing certain offenses by members of the family, and how it is our duty as a court to punish those involved. I watched this myself last week, and I couldn't believe that at the point of ruling on whether to grant bail or not, the officer goes on to say stories about how there's a trend nowadays in the country, families are involved in committing certain crimes. That, to a layman, would convey the message that this person before this officer, his goose is cooked, because the officer has already said, you and your wife and your children, we are seeing this very often, and therefore you must have done it. We are not supposed to make such remarks. Such remarks, if at all, can only be made at the conclusion of the trial and when a basis has been laid for drawing such conclusions. Why do courts like the use of legalese in their decisions? Yet a large majority of those to whom those decisions are meant are not versed in technical legal language. Again, this is addressed in the guide. You will hear and read words and phrases which again have been defined in that guide, words like de novo. I would have said here that the 3 judges who recused themselves had, through that recusal, the cases, or rather the matter had to be heard de novo, but I decided to use the word afresh because that's what it means. So why do we use words like inter alia? Why do we use a fortiori? Why do we use ab initio, compos mentis, ejus dem generis? Why do we use this to litigants who really do not understand this. They don't even care what they mean. They just want to know in a simple language what you are communicating through your decision. These words, other than anything else, are capable of causing serious confusion, and even to those who are learned in other fields. Do you ever wonder why judges speak softly? I mean, in court, not out here. If you meet a judge in a podium like this, you can hear me. Sometimes in social places, you can hear judges, really talking loud. But when you go to court, they just murmur. And have you ever asked yourselves, why do judges speak in low tones in court, even when something is so serious? I have no answer why they do that. But I know that many people leave courtrooms and ask what transpired. Even when the proceedings, even when the judgment was read in a language that they understand, they will always ask, what did the judge say? But they sat in that court and listened through the delivery of the judgment. Our own Directorate of Public Affairs and Communications at the judiciary has not itself been very useful or helpful. It has not been very proactive in helping reporters and the court in providing what Kwamsesi talked about, the summaries of the court decisions in controversial matters or in matters of public interest. We have a directorate. We only see it when it sends a summary of daily media reports, newspaper reports. We only see it when we have a complaint that we have been misreported in our decision, but they do not take time to engage the media at the time decisions are delivered. They do not provide summaries, although in many courts, summaries are now provided, like in the Supreme Court. They summarize for you the judgment so that you do not make a mistake if you do not understand it. It is because of the above and many other challenges confronting court reporters in the course of their daily work that I highly commend the Kenya Editors Guild for.
That is the President of the Court of Appeal, Justice William Uuko, launching the court reporting guidelines. This is in collaboration with the Kenya Editors Guild and the Media Council of Kenya, plus other players. He did talk about the jargons being used by journalists in their reporting. Jargons are everywhere. The medical field has its own. Even along the lines that you are involved in the religious circles, there are jargons as well. There is benediction, for example. What is benediction? I've heard some preachers use the word affliction. What are some of these hard words that probably the flock, when they hear, they don't know what the pastor is talking about?
Edward, if you hear a pastor or a minister using those jargons, they're just telling you that they have just graduated from a theological school. And so they are being thankful for the money that the congregation spent to send them to school. They will just come and talk about eschatology, pneumatology, all those things you're talking about. But we in our mentoring processes, we mentor those young ministers and tell them the best way to communicate is simple and clear in a way that your audience will get your message and give you feedback. And then, unless that happens, then there is no communication. But it is a human nature, particularly with the young people, to want to throw words up here and there. But as you correctly said, it is in every field. It's in every field. But it is very unfortunate if we are communicating with you and I throw all the jargons in the theological field and eventually you get nothing. It is like the rhetoric question that Justice Uuko has asked there. I was really waiting for the answer. Why do the judges speak softly?
But even the judgment that was handed down by Magistrate Douglas Ogoti, you have to be keen and listening to understand where the judgment is, because he will read a document that perhaps take him 1 hour to, but the judgment is just a couple of lines beneath that document. Of course, those are things which are normal. Every field has its own way of doing things. But as we wind up, there was an incident yesterday in Migori County where the members of some religious organization were fighting over the control of a shrine. These are factional divisions that did not arrive yesterday or the day before yesterday. They have been with us for a couple of times. What do you make of it, and how do we solve this? Because at the end of the day, it's about the gospel.
Yes, thank you. That's a very unfortunate, very, very unfortunate incident there at the Reggio Maria. And church langos, once in a while, they come up. Sometimes they'll come up particularly on leadership, and which is unfortunate, because leaders are supposed to just come out clearly from the prescribed ways of getting leaders in the Bible. And the Bible is not lacking anything. It is clear on how do you place in place leaders, how do you appoint new leaders. So if the biblical principles are clearly followed, there should be no langos like that. But what happens is, I think the world has infiltrated into the church so much that what is out there in the world or in the secular is, maybe if a person is from my community or my ethnic group, they need to be the next leader, or this ethnic group or tribe has been in leadership for so long. And I think we need to, as church leaders and church, we need to rise above that. And how to do that is to follow the biblical principles because it speaks on every issue. Talk about family, talk about leadership, talk about succession, talk about raising, everything is right in there. But what we saw is a breach of those biblical principles on how to transition from one leader to another. And the result of that is the church ends up getting a bad image. When we watch that, I watch that with my children and other children, and they say, is that also a church? And it's very hard for me to explain that because really there is a problem somewhere. Of course, the situation was made, or rather was made worse by the amount of force that the police used to control the situation. That didn't make it any good, because in my mind right now, I still see that person who was on the ground being hammered by the police, because I thought they had gone there to bring the people together. And this is something that we have seen in this country. The force that the police use on citizens, especially on such a situation, is sometimes needs to be checked and use other more simpler diplomatic ways of resolving a conflict. So the church in conflict it's an unfortunate situation. It can happen anywhere, and it should not happen. The way to deal with it is to simply follow the biblical principles that are needed. And it is also important for those who come to mediate or to resolve the conflict, like our forces, to be more peaceful and to use ways that are more humane in dealing with those conflicts.
In such an instance, is it about the gospel, or it's about the authority and the influence that comes with particular positions within the church?
Unfortunately, judging by the results and what we see, it is not about the gospel, unfortunately. Because if it is the gospel is peaceful. The gospel will give way, not just insist on my way. The gospel has peaceful and very clear ways of dealing with issues, even conflict. It is very clear how you resolve it. The gospel has everything covered in the scripture. So that is an unfortunate situation, because looking at it and seeing the results, you definitely see some ego conflicts right there somewhere, which is unfortunate and should not happen.
When you read about the rise of the Protestants, where they were breaking away from what used to be there then, they went out, began their own congregations, and built it from there. Shouldn't that be the route for some of these people who feel disgruntled by the management of these particular institutions?
That could be the last resort. But before getting into that last resort, they should explore the mechanisms that exist within their church denomination or institution to resolve conflicts. Before you get your church registered in this country and elsewhere, you provide a constitution for that guides you, the bylaws that guides you on how you operate. And if you look at those documents, most of them, and probably all of them, otherwise they would not pass the test of registrations, they are very clear. They are not lacking anything. So I think if people could follow the guidelines that they have put themselves, or that they were written down by their forefathers, of course the first one is the Bible, because the Bible is a constitution for all of us, every Christian. We subscribe to it, their own document. Then we should not be able to reach to that. But if all that doesn't work, then what you are suggesting, people would rather walk and join another place or try to create another one. And once again, that is why I'm emphasizing the importance of churches belonging to the umbrellas that exist in this country. The umbrellas are meant to regulate. They are meant to speak harmony and peace. They are meant to help people within a denomination that are not able to resolve the conflict internally. The umbrellas that exist in this country for churches are meant to help them resolve. That is why, as the General Secretary of the Federation of Evangelical and Indigenous Churches of Kenya, I have a mandate to help a new church that is subscribed to the Federation when they have conflicts like that, even before they reach that extent. But then, those people must have registered under that federation. And that's why, again, as I said earlier, that's why we need the moral support. That's why we need the financial support. That's why we need the encouragement, because what we are doing could prevent problems like the one we saw yesterday.
All right. Finally, two things. What is your favorite story in the Bible?
Oh, my favorite story in the Bible is the story of a young man who was very poor, born in pain. His name is Jabez in the Chronicles. He was born in pain, and he prayed. He told God to enlarge his territory, take away the pain, bless me. And what I like about it is its conclusion, and God granted all his requests. His territory was expanded, his pain was taken away, which teaches me that God answers prayer, which teaches me that you can come from a humble background and rise to wherever you want to rise. Your past should not be a prison for you. We are all products of certain past, but we can refuse to be prisoners of the past and rise above the past, painful past, like Jabez, and forge into the future. We can all look forward to a better future, regardless of where we are coming from. Even in this COVID, we can look forward to a better future. We can look forward to a future whereby God has blessed our country. And that's why, as we have talked in this discussion today, we all need to come together, the institutions in this country, to talk about that future of hope. Beyond the COVID, post-COVID, that future where the youth get jobs, where the youth are not used by being given some shillings because they are jobless. We talk about the orphans in this country. As we speak today, there is a children's home, an orphanage children's home in Kinangop called Tumaini Children's Home in Nandarasi near Karema Girls. That home in Kinangop, for 4 months, they have no electricity, and they have 90 children, 90 orphans in an institution with one parent, no electricity. You know why? The Kenya Power says we have no generator, and we have not been able to get a generator in 4 months. That is why it takes me back to what I said earlier. There are more pressing problems that we should be addressing than 2022. I would rather be talking about how 22 orphans in Nandarasi, in Tumaini Children's Home, will get electricity, I would rather be talking about the problem of Kenya Power and whether it's leadership or management or corruption. I would rather be addressing that so that I touch the lives of the orphans today, so that the orphans in Tumaini, Kinangop have electricity.
All right. And finally, if anyone was watching and they want to get in touch with you and your ministry, how do they do that?
COVID-19 has not been very bad. It has taught us to use social media and all forums. So I am in all the social medias. Anyone who would like me to clarify anything, you just look for Bishop David Munyiri Dagana in any social media. I am on Facebook, I am on YouTube, I'm on Instagram, I'm in all of them. Just Bishop David Munyiri Dagana. And as a Kraje, I have nothing to hide. I give all my names. So it is Bishop David Munyiri Dagana.
All right.
Yes.
And I want to give you an opportunity to give probably the shortest sermon in less than a minute. This is your camera. Speak to the issues that you think are important to this country and in terms of direction in less than 1 minute. Perhaps that's the shortest sermon that you're going to ever give.
I am so grateful for this opportunity to speak to the Kenyans, and I want you to know that there is hope. There is hope beyond COVID, and I want to speak to the leaders today, starting from the top leadership, that we please spare us from the campaign right now, spare us from 2022, and help us to address the challenges that we are facing today. And if you spare us from that, you will have more time to look at the institutions like national cohesion that you have put in place that will be able to do their mandate and to hold them accountable. Please, let us deal with the issues of orphans in this country who are struggling. No electricity in Kinangop for Tumaini Children's Home. Let us speak to the hungry people. Let us speak issues of joblessness. Let us speak issues of pastors who have no food, they have no clothes, they can't take care of their families because the churches got shut down. Let us speak to the real issues. And together, we can make this country a better place where everyone would like to live in. And I want to be among the number that is speaking about a better Kenya, a better future, a Kenya where we want to live in. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bishop Dagana. That was really good. And that does it for us for this edition of NewsCheck. We do thank you very much. Maurice, yes, that's the camera I am on. We do thank you very much for joining us from 10 a.m. to now. Tamrini is coming up next, but just a quick reminder, this afternoon the Senate will be convening as usual. One of the main agendas there is the debate on the report by the Budget Committee on the third basis for revenue allocation or sharing among the 47 county governments. Of course, that is a discussion that has stalled 9 times, so perhaps Kenyans will be waiting for that particular process to get underway. And another one is that the governor for Garissa County, Ali Kurani, has been barred from office by the court. He has been granted bail, though, 3.25 million or 5 million shillings bond. My name is Edward Kabasa. Timothy Kipnusu is coming up next with Tambrini.
This Tuesday on KBC Channel 1.
Okay, so fine. Sometimes it feels like it's too much to handle. But you have to stand up and carry on.
Don't remember the kind of relationship we had. I want to understand. I need to know.
Ramon never made it to his wedding. He stood her up. He took off with an ex-girlfriend from Tijuana.
I can't believe it. That imbecile was capable of doing that to Fabiola.
Well, I called it. Anyway, you now have a clear path to her. And I'm so sure she's gonna need you to console her.
In love with Ramon. Tonight on KBC Channel 1.
Get out of here! Do not dare to show up here again, or else you will be dead.
I'm here to meet Gaston.
Did not you hear what I just said? That Khurasans do not snitch against each other.
My son hasn't done anything.
So what if he is regent? Ultimately, he is the king. And a king is considered as God's envoy. That's why an attack on the king is an attack on God himself.
They will keep creating obstacles. They will keep doing this to Sushim. There is no doubt about the fact that Sushim is weaker than Ashok.
Tonight on KBC Channel 1.
I really can't be bothered anymore. I hate boxing. It's so violent and barbaric. No offense.
Boy, please.
One day, uta need Lucky Tena. And a lot of other people in the future.
I'd like to go home.
Did you remember something?
If that's why you brought me here, it's not helping. Take me home.
Jules, I'm sorry.
Let's go.
I just thought that...
That's your problem. You don't think. You never think.
Next on.
Because your pocket could have deep of a nice. And we fall in love like we did.